It's now my pleasure to introduce Jack Linard, who is head of Unilever's Personal Care Regulatory Affairs team for North America. He heads Unilever's advocacy efforts on new and proposed regulations. He has overseen Unilever's over-the-counter drug program and has been a part of Walmart's chemical sustainability program since its inception. He has also served on several trade associations, serving as the chair of the Grocery Manufacturers Association's newly formed Non-Foods Chemical Management Committee, and representing Unilever on the Personal Care Products Council. I assure you we will give you your full time. We're going to squeeze the break instead of squeezing you. Thank you very much, Jack.
Okay. Oh, good. I still have my 25 minutes. I want to thank Kathleen McLaughlin for inviting our head of sustainability to give this talk, and unfortunately he couldn't make it. He's in the process of changing his role from more of a regional one to a global one. So I normally give talks about product safety. I sit on the California Green Ribbon Science Panel advising California DTSC on policies relating to safer chemistries. So I'm used to talking about product safety, human safety, environmental safety, occupational safety, physical safety, and as I point out, I do remember shampoos in glass bottles, which are incredibly dangerous in a shower because they do break. They also are very heavy to ship around and create a lot of greenhouse gases. The one I've always focused on is microbiological safety because that's the role of preservatives and preservation in a lot of our product lines. We had a lot of discussions as to what I should be presenting today, and we decided in the end that we would go for a broader challenge to the group, not just talking about specific products, but really a broader challenge. The key from our point of view on making sustainable living commonplace is that we have to look at the environmental, social, and economic factors that come into play. I've always told people that we can drop our environmental footprint to zero by not selling anything. Unfortunately, somebody else will sell that product and may not be quite as good a citizen as we are or as we aspire to be. I just also want to mention that this is a global issue. It's not a U.S. issue. It's not a Canadian issue. It is a global one. We have to treat it that way. We also have to plan for the future now. But, as you'll see, there are a lot of opportunities for innovation and growth in the business sector. We need to engage all people, not only the companies, and look at the role of multinational companies. We will allude to it a little bit later. But environmental groups, academics, politicians, regulators, retailers, you name it. We have to get everybody engaged and working together. Importantly, my fellow colleagues at Unilever share this goal as well. We are committed to this, to making sustainable living commonplace. We talk about it all the time. We have very often updates on how we're doing, mostly good, but we also report out where we're a little bit deficient. And lastly, I just want to say, while I do represent Unilever, today I'm going to give a few examples from Unilever. Treat it as a catalyst for how all of us should think going forward. Each company has its own strengths, weaknesses, but think about how we should do this together. Okay, now. Is this I have to figure out how to do the slides. There we go. Over 100 years ago, William Lever started his own business making and selling soap. Sunlight Soap was his brand name. He was doing it in Northwest England. He was a social entrepreneur who saw the benefits of selling low-cost branded soap at a time when cholera and dysentery in Britain's Victorian slums were widespread. And he found out by selling branded high-quality soap, he could improve people's lives and grow his business at the same time. He brought hygiene to people who didn't know about germs and why hygiene was important. But he did this. He inspired an entire company. Today, that company is a global one. It's Unilever. We had turnover of $62 billion a year ago. We are represented in virtually every part of the world. You can see there that even over 40% of our business is in India and Southeast Asia. We have huge operations literally everywhere. What do we make? Just to give you an idea, not many people know who we are, but we have some pretty popular brands. This is, I've just added Ben & Jerry's. We've owned Ben & Jerry's now for over 20 years. People don't even know that. But it's one of our pillars. They're a group that still thinks very independently, and a lot of times they act as thought leaders for us. We also now own Seventh Generation. Again, I'm working closely with the people in Vermont on all aspects of their business as well to make sure we're all on the same page. But unfortunately, the world has a lot of new and big challenges. While William Lever's purpose at the time was bold, he achieved it. He brought much better health to the workers and the people of England at the time. We have big challenges. One, nearly 800 million people around the world don't have access to safe drinking water, and over 2 billion don't have access to proper sanitation. More than 2 million children die each year from diarrhea. 1 in 10 adults in the world is obese. Yet almost 1 billion people go hungry every day. Climate change is causing extreme weather conditions and changes to seasons. Over 1 billion people around the world live in water-scarce areas with drinking water at a premium. And demand for food is increasing to feed a growing population. Governments struggle to agree and implement global solutions on climate change and human development. We believe, though, that the world cannot wait. The urgency to do something is now, and that business and all of our brands have to be part of that solution. We have a clear purpose. Our goal is to make sustainable living commonplace. This is the best way to ensure long-term growth. We have made this our purpose because it is possible for 9 billion people to live well and live within the natural limits of the planet. 9 billion is what we expect the population of the world to be roughly in 2030. It can be done. And just as William Lever believed the only way to tackle poor hygiene was to make cleanliness desirable and aspirational, today we believe that we can only achieve the better future we all want if we make sustainable living the new norm. But for us to achieve our purpose, we have to develop a new way of doing business, because the old, i.e. in some cases the current economic systems, are no longer fit for the purpose. We have to develop a new business model in which, 1, all agricultural raw materials come from sustainable sources. 2, people's health and well-being are a priority for everyone. Farmers' livelihoods are improved and women get a fair deal, and the planet is protected for all future generations. Tackling these challenges are not seen as problems, but as opportunities for our business. The business case for growing a company's sustainability is incredibly compelling. Consumers expect it. Retailers increasingly demand it from their suppliers. More importantly, it drives innovation and market development. It also saves money and avoids costs. And inspires the people who work for our business. So it isn't just about doing good, it's also about doing well. To help capture the ways in which sustainability contributes to our business, we have a 4-point framework that we use. 1 is more growth. Sustainability is supporting growth by deepening brand equity, driving sales, and inspiring innovation. Our sustainable living brands are a good example, and I'll talk about a few of these later. The second big part of the framework is lower costs. By cutting waste and reducing the use of energy, raw materials, and natural resources, we create efficiencies and cut our cost. Cost avoidance ultimately helps improve our margins and our business success. We have achieved cumulatively cost avoidance of over $825 million since 2008 due to these programs. Just as importantly, less risk is also very important to us. Sustainable ways of doing business can help us mitigate risks in our operations. Operating sustainability helps us future-proof our supply chain against risks associated with climate change and long-term sourcing of raw materials. And I think that for me, the most important thing is the fourth part is more trust. Putting sustainability at the heart of our business model and operations strengthens our relationships with stakeholders, be it consumers, retailers, environmental groups, politicians, academics, but it also helps maintain our value and relevance to those consumers while inspiring our current and future employees. Companies which address both the needs of the environment and concerns of the citizens will prosper over the long term. That is our belief. It's this thinking that our Chief Executive Officer, Paul Pullman, has set of growing the business while decoupling our environmental footprint from our growth, but also increasing our positive social impact. Our blueprint for achieving our vision is what we call the Sustainable Living Plan. It was launched in 2010 and is helping us to achieve our vision. It's our blueprint for sustainable growth. Now in its 8th year, the USLP, as we call it, is proving that there is no trade-off between sustainability and profitable growth. It is helping us save costs, fuel innovation, and recruit and retain the best talent we can possibly get. The Sustainable Living Plan has 3 goals. We aim to help 1 billion people improve their health and well-being, have the environmental footprint of the making and use of our products, and enhance the livelihoods of millions of people as we grow our business. That last part is really important because people need jobs. They need to have the ability to make a living and contribute to society as a whole. But one of the big things we've found is that it helps innovation. We have teams of scientists around the world, and this is a challenge to them to figure out how we can do this. When we look at our business and brands, it opens up all new avenues of innovative possibilities. Just 3 quick examples. Lifebuoy soap has been around since the 1890s in parts of the world, even was launched in the US in about 1900. We have a major issue in India, where Lifebuoy is, in effect, the world's largest selling soap bar. But the incidence of children dying from diarrhea and respiratory diseases in India is quite high. And a lot of this can be prevented by just simply hand washing. But by creating a mechanism by which children begin to like to wash, by showing them after 10 seconds the product turns colors from white to green, they actually like now hand washing. It's just a simple way to get them to wash longer and wash more often. And in such, we're hoping that we can show that the incidence of childhood diarrhea and respiratory illnesses have declined. It's now fun to wash your hands, and that's a huge benefit we see for both us, but also for the health of the population. In many parts of the world, water is incredibly scarce. So we make a lot of laundry products around the world. And in fact, the biggest washing machine in the world is your hands. More people wash by hand than any other way. And in many cases in India and Southeast Asia, people have to go to a well to bring water. But turning our innovation people onto this fact that people carry a lot of water, they develop products which rinse faster, so they don't need as much water, and allows people to get their clothes clean in a much shorter period of time using less of an incredibly valuable resource in water. Knorr is one of our biggest brands. We're helping farmers to improve all of their agricultural practices. So the products are not only nutritious and delicious, but made from sustainably grown ingredients. It reinforces the brand's positioning, but also capitalizes on consumers' interest in and preference for products that are concerned about land and nature. I have a colleague here in Washington who spends, I think, half her time sitting in soybean fields and canola fields, making sure that our sustainable farming practices are being put into place. A brand can integrate sustainability into its purpose. This is what we call a sustainable living brand. Such a brand must not only have a clear purpose that contributes to social or environmental concern, but the product itself must contribute directly to one of the targets in our sustainable living plan. In 2017, we analyzed our top brands using this definition and mapped this against those brands' business results. Our sustainable living brands portfolio is increasing, and in the second year that we have measured their progress, we found that sustainable living brands grew even faster than they did in 2014. They delivered 70% of our growth and grew 50% faster than the rest of our business. We recognize that these results are strictly a correlation. I'm not saying they're a cause, but the fact is they do that. Delivering on the opportunities that sustainability offers requires action on multiple fronts. We've made good progress and are on track in delivering more than 80% of our targets. By the end of 2016, we helped around 538 million people improve their health and hygiene. We have enabled 920,000 women to access initiatives that are aimed to develop their skills. And we're working with 2.2 million smallholder farmers and small-scale retailers around the world, enabling to gain access to initiatives to improve agricultural practices or increase sales. The biggest challenge remains reducing the environmental impact of our products across the value chain. Our waste footprint has been reduced by 28%, meaning we're halfway to our goal of reducing packaging waste. However, our greenhouse gas footprint has actually increased since 2010, and water use has only been reduced by 7%. While we have made some progress in these areas, a big part of our footprint is not in our own operations, but in the hands of consumers who use our product. Heating water is one of the biggest sources of energy and greenhouse gas generation that we have. But we're not going to shirk away from this. We're actually in the process of trying to understand how we can influence consumers to shorten their shower. We put that on some of our bottles. Use lower temperature water so you don't have to heat as much. But also we're looking at how can we change our power supply for our factories, but also for consumers. So we're investing in wind power and other types of energy. Renewable, we have to lead by example in this case. We have actually said that we will become carbon positive by 2030, sourcing 100% of our energy from renewable sources. This means that in partnership with others, we will directly support the production of more zero-carbon renewable energy than we need for our own resources. We're also refining our overarching water goal. We're looking at how to align this goal better with the ambitions of the Sustainable Development Goals. While we are making good progress with our own impacts, such as the scale and urgency of tackling climate change, food security, and human development, that we have asked ourselves, how can we make a bigger difference? How can we make a transformational difference to those global challenges, not just small incremental improvements? The scale and urgency of the challenge the world faces are so great that we need to look beyond our own business to drive transformational change. We've identified 3 areas which directly affect our business, where we can help deliver real systems change by working in partnerships with others, such as NGOs and other stakeholders. 3 areas where we can make a bigger difference: helping to eliminate deforestation linked to agricultural commodity supply chains, which causes up to 15% of total greenhouse gas emissions; helping to improve food security by championing sustainable agriculture and helping smallholder farmers improve their yields and livelihoods. Just note, 85% of the world's farmers are smallholders and produce about 70% of the world's food. These farmers are keys to global food security. And lastly, helping to make water, sanitation, and hygiene available to all. We're also championing women's empowerment. The women who work in our business, in our supply chain, and who purchase our products around the world, as women have a key role to play in all of our sustainability goals. Adoption of the sustainability goals, the SDGs, and the Paris Agreement on climate change set out a global intent to end poverty and prevent runaway climate change. Realizing this ambition will require a step change in the way that the private sector, governments, and civil society work together. We need to create transformational change, a fundamental change to whole systems rather than incremental improvements. But we can't do it on our own. So we are working in partnership with other businesses, NGOs, and governments to drive our progress. For example, by working with the Consumer Goods Forum and others, we have helped to persuade most of the traders and buyers of palm oil to pledge to end deforestation. Working with UNICEF, PSI, the Toilet Bowl Board Coalition, WaterAid, and others, we are helping to improve access to water, sanitation, and hygiene for millions more people in countries where this is most needed: India, Vietnam, Bangladesh, among others. And working with the United Nations International Fund for Agricultural Development, Solidaridad, Oxfam, and others, we're helping to train millions of more smallholder farmers to farm sustainably. Through mobilizing collective action and campaigning for the things that matter most to ourselves, our business, and to the world, we inspire people to change the world around them for the better and create opportunities for us all. The global goals provide a roadmap and common vision for sustainable development. The 17-point plan to end poverty, fix inequality, and stop climate change by 2030. For business, the global goals can unlock trillions of dollars, creating opportunities for growth by making the world a better place. That's why we are playing our role and our part in mobilizing action through partnerships to create sustainable business models that will make the goals a reality and build a brighter future for us all. A brighter future has already begun. We are at a turning point in history, a time when we all need to change the way we live and work for everyone on the planet to live well and live sustainably. A new business model with sustainable living at its heart is key. Please join us in this sustainability journey. There has never been a better time to create a brighter future for all of us. Thank you.
We have time for a couple of questions.
Good morning. I'm John Balbus with NIEHS. Thank you for that talk. It's actually really inspiring to see a major industry putting out this message of sustainable living. You closed, and in the middle, you said some things that were that tweaked my ear, that were suggesting transformation in our economic model, not just in the business model, but in an economic model. And you alluded specifically at one point to using metrics of human health and well-being as indicators of an economic model, in addition to things like growth and profit. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what Unilever is doing to share with its, first of all, its stakeholders, metrics of alternative economic indicators from financial growth and profit?
I think one of the things we do are trying to figure out ways to do that. Mostly in part, we look at countries where we sell products where some of those conditions are really in dire need of improvement. So in India, for example, we can look at how many children we've touched with training programs on how to better hand wash. So really it's sort of, a lot of it has to do with education, but also it's education with a purpose, dual-fold purpose. Obviously, looking at the markets we serve and the products we sell, we need better hygiene from those people, children, to actually help us grow our business even more. So really, they mesh together quite nicely in that sense. So we actually go that how many people have we talked to, how many training programs have we done for farmers, and then obviously we go back and look at the metrics. Okay, did they live up to what we trained them to? So there's a lot of time and effort spent in going back and just checking on the progress once we've trained them, once we've sort of given them a program.
So it sounds like a kind of a parallel system for you.
It's parallel, but they obviously have a lot of connections between the two. And that's really one of the things that I think is most incredible about it is it's not just going out and trying to sell more. It's trying to create the systems by which we sell more, but creating a better world to do that in.
Yeah. Dan Greenbaum with the Health Effects Institute. An excellent talk. And I have to tell you that you've probably begun to restore my faith in a word that I have found very problematic, sustainability. So it's great to see the efforts that you have underway and the efforts to measure change as opposed to simply say we're going to set this goal and do something. Partnerships, innovation by industry are really valuable. They always bring up the issue, and it's an issue that's being played out right in this country right now, as well as in many other places, about the balance between partnerships and innovation and voluntarism and government action. And if we look at, for example, the success of the Clean Air Act in the United States, which most people would say, what's happening in China today with air quality, where they are making dramatic improvements. Lead was mentioned earlier, and gasoline. You see many, many examples where it took a government action to do something. On the other hand, we have a lot of efforts on voluntarism and initiative, and sometimes the best ideas come from that. Where does Unilever come out on that balancing act? You sit on a committee in California, so you probably deal with this on a day-to-day basis. But I'm just curious.
I think what we've realized is we can't wait for governments to do it all. And we've said we're going to be at the forefront of this, whether we hope people follow us. That's our intention, is by doing it on ourselves, it's just one company. But one company with global reach, and as I talked to one state senator from Vermont a couple of years ago, I said, look at the good that a multinational can do. We have the ability to make some changes that local governments cannot even think of doing, simply because of the product mix we sell, what we can and cannot do. So I said, that's where our mission is right now, is yes, we'll try to bring those people. We want people to follow us. We want local government officials to follow us. But we have to set the example and do it first ourselves. If we don't do it ourselves, then why is anybody going to follow? So really, it's trying to be out there, but it's also been good business. Those brands which have had a long-standing social mission have done incredibly well. One of the biggest brands we have is Dove. Dove is a global cleaning bar, shampoo, deodorant. Had a tremendous year last year. And it's about empowering women. It's about making you real beauty, as we call it. It's that mission that helps drive it. It's both, but as I said, it's also social, economic, but as well as environmental. So we look at it from that point of view, but in the end, we want to be a catalyst. We want to drive it. How can we talk about it if we're not doing it ourselves? So really, it's just being out on the forefront. The one thing that I know from the U.S. perspective, and my role is predominantly North America, is a lot of this happens in Southeast Asia, Africa, India, where the conditions are just that much worse. So, we don't see as much here, but believe me, we're on the field all the time in India, in those places, making sure that these things happen. Where we see it is in sustainable agriculture. We have a huge program in the U.S. and Canada to source as raw materials for our food division, and they're out there. They're out there talking to farmers constantly, trying to make sure we have those sustainable agricultural practices in place.
Good morning, and Seydou Witherspoon with the Children's Environmental Health Network and the Cancer Free Economy Network. Thank you so much for your comments. So I hear often, weekly I'd say, from our consumers all over the country about what really matters to them. And at the end of the day, these environmental health factors are very near and dear to their hearts. They're personally impacted. Linda mentioned the personal connections. Every single one of us has someone we know impacted with some long-term illness, if not ourselves. It's an awful, or chronic illness. With that said, my question deals a lot with, I think, how you answered the last question, but just expanding, if possible, a little further. Understanding that you're trying to take the lead and really appreciate all the wonderful aspects Unilever is doing and all the companies encompass. Also, simultaneously, are you thinking about the leverage points that you do have, the opportunities that you do have with all of these wonderful products out there that people do want to spend their hard-earned money on to support not only the product itself, but what it stands behind and what it is either feeding or not feeding when it comes to our environmental and global economy. Are you thinking about those leverage opportunities that you all would have as, with the position that you've created for yourself, for others to not just look at you, but to really encourage them, invite them to take a stand with you on some of these sustainable practices?
That's a loaded question. I think the answer is yes. We're always encouraging people to work with us. We do a lot of community outreach, including supporting, we have some farms we're working with in Harlem at the moment, started by one of our food vice presidents. He wanted to do sort of urban farming as a mission to get people to grow a lot more of the food they eat. And so, again, it's acting as a pilot program, but one which I think has brought a lot of rewards, not so much on the bottom line because they're very small, but again, it gets people thinking about the right things to eat, the right things to do, and the fact that even in New York City, you can actually have a vegetable garden and complement the food you normally eat. So there's a lot of education involved in that, and we're willing to put the time. We do allow people to do volunteer activities, but a lot of our competitors do the same as well. So really, as I said, we're big enough, we can do things that some small companies or governments just cannot do, and we try to do it. That doesn't mean we're perfect. We obviously are, we try to go for perfection, but we know, we can be criticized at times. We know we didn't meet one of our sustainable living goals, and it really hurt to say that. But every year we do invite in a lot of our stakeholders to hear about our progress, and they're free to give it their opinions. So we do take that feedback very seriously.